after more than 2 decades of waivers, we are no closer to a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interests of the United States of America.
Ey Trump, sen ne yapmak istiyorsun? Bu nasıl bir yaklaşımdır? Siyasi liderler karıştırmak için değil, barıştırmak için olurlar.
Je ne peux que désapprouver et réaffirmer ma position, puisque la décision du président Trump est une décision unilatérale qui n'engage que les États-Unis d'Amérique.
فليكن غدا 8/12/2017 يوم غضب وبداية تحرك واسع لانتفاضة أسميها انتفاضة حرية القدس والضفة.
I have consistently spoken out against any unilateral measures that would jeopardize the prospect of peace for Israelis and Palestinians. In this moment of great anxiety, I want to make it clear there is no alternative to the two-state solution.
Ignoring the Palestinian Muslim and Christian rights in Jerusalem will only fuel further extremism and undermine the war against terrorism.
And that I'm intending to speak to President Trump about this matter, but our position has not changed. That the status of Jerusalem should be determined as in a negotiated settlement between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and Jerusalem should ultimately form a shared capital between the Israeli and Palestinian states.
It is only by realizing the vision of two states living side by side in peace, security and mutual recognition, with Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and Palestine, and all final status issues resolved permanently through negotiations, that the legitimate aspirations of both peoples will be achieved.
Ich finde, Präsident Trump untergräbt mit seiner angekündigten Entscheidung die internationale Stabilität. Eine Stabilität, die von den USA übrigens sehr lange geprägt und garantiert worden ist. Erreichte Fortschritte sind damit in Gefahr.
الحكومة العراقية تحذر بشدة من تداعيات هذا القرار على استقرار المنطقة والعالم، وما يمثله هذا من إجحاف بحقوق الفلسطينيين والعالم العربي والإسلامي والأديان الأخرى.
E che prevalgano saggezza e prudenza per evitare di aggiungere nuovi elementi di tensione in un panorama mondiale già convulso e segnato da tanti e crudeli conflitti.
Clashes and civil unrest have broken out here in the West Bank. We are on the outskirts of the Palestinian city of Ramallah. These protesters have begun setting fires. They're burning tires to create a smoke screen, and they are throwing stones and other debris. It's difficult to see, but behind this smoke are Israeli troops, and they have been firing volleys of tear gas occasionally to drive the demonstrators back. All these protesters say they are here for one reason, because Palestinians, they say, will not give up on their right to Jerusalem, no matter what President Trump says. In a day of rage, Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip expressed their outrage, frustration, and sense of betrayal by the United States. Demonstrations quickly led to clashes with Israeli troops, anger boiling over. Palestinians had been promised for years in international negotiations that Jerusalem's final status would be settled through diplomacy, only to see President Trump reverse decades of U.S. policy and recognize Israel's claim that the city is its capital.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
After he said that, Palestinians switched off the lights on the Christmas tree in Bethlehem's Manger Square. This morning, more passive resistance. Palestinians closed their shops across Jerusalem in a general strike.
We're here today. We're condemning the American President Donald Trump decision by declaring Jerusalem as the state of Israel.
A profound shift appears to be underway. Nearly 25 years ago, President Clinton brought Israeli and Palestinian leaders together for the Oslo Accords, with the U.S. as moderator-in-chief. Now, many Palestinians say that peace process is over, that President Trump killed it when his administration took sides on the most fundamental and emotional division in the region, the status of Jerusalem. Israel is on high alert. Security officials warn violence could escalate, but say they can handle whatever comes next. Israelis say the peace process wasn't working anyway.
For there is no peace that doesn't include Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel.
Israelis thanked President Trump for accepting their historic claim to Jerusalem, despite warnings from across Europe and from some of Washington's closest allies that the move puts peace in the Middle East at risk.
And the clashes here do not seem to be letting up. If anything, they are intensifying. More people are arriving. They are bringing in more stones. And it is not just here. There are several locations in the West Bank that look just like this right now. It is the largest scale violence we've seen in this part of the West Bank in several years.
U.S.-designated terror group Hamas now calling for 3 days of rage in response to the president's declaration of Jerusalem as Israel's capital city.
And the Middle East is on edge this evening. Palestinians clash with Israeli troops over the news that President Trump intends to relocate the U.S. Embassy in Israel as a way of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The State Department issuing a travel warning for the region. Leland Vittert, live at the White House tonight with the story. Leland.
Good evening, Martha. The reaction to this continues to be as split as the Middle East. The White House really reveling in their supporters' happiness at this decision, calling it courageous. On the other hand, you've got the State Department reportedly telling the Israelis to not gloat too much over this decision. The White House at the same time really unfazed, though, that reportedly President Abbas of the Palestinians will not meet with Vice President Mike Pence when he is in the Middle East about 10 days from now. The White House and the Vice President's office saying they will wait to hear directly from President Abbas. At least so far, the promises and warnings by Arab leaders of unending wars and fires that can't be extinguished have not materialized. As we reported last night, the rain kept people off the streets in Jerusalem, but today a little bit better weather and the end of the Arab work week led to clashes at some of the usual flashpoints. There were a couple of thousand Palestinians that gathered to burn tires and throw rocks at the Israeli checkpoints. The Israeli troops then came out with tear gas and rubber bullets. Palestinian leaders and some of the more violent Iranian-backed militant groups have called for a third intifada or uprising by the Palestinians. We haven't seen anything that remotely resembles that kind of violence yet. Protests also around the Middle East. In Jordan at the U.S. Embassy, protesters gathered there to express their displeasure. The embassy there, and among other places in the Middle East, has been beefed up by Marine anti-terrorism teams to prevent any significant violence. None reported so far at U.S. embassies around the region. The embassy in Amman, though, has warned all Americans to maintain a low profile And they also said that tomorrow the children of U.S. diplomats will not be going to school, and tomorrow is the key. Friday noon prayers is oftentimes the flashpoint for significant protests, gives the imam time to whip up the most angry of his followers and then push them out into the streets. Martha, Friday prayers let out at about 1 p.m. local time in the Middle East. That's 6 a.m. here tomorrow morning in Washington. Certainly the White House will be watching.